Would put the mic in front of me too. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another Friday Mastermind. Every Friday, 9 o'clock Pacific, we are bringing leadership and value to this community. I don't think we're going to have my wingman Todd Bookspan today. Not sure exactly where he's at. He's going to music festivals all over America. I think he's at the Be Wealthy event with Keller Williams right now. I saw some photos of that, so I'm pretty sure that's where Todd is. Kristen Messerly might be joining us at some time, the Chief Executive Officer of First Home IQ. And then, of course, Deborah, you are my wing woman today. What's up?
Hi, happy Friday and a happy Mother's Day weekend to everybody who's tuning in.
Yeah, no, I love Mother's Day weekend. Love celebrating my wife, love celebrating women, love celebrating everything that women bring to the world. So happy Mother's Day to everyone.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Well, our special guest, Clayton Collins, probably doesn't need much of an introduction just because he's been a guest in this community. And he is the kingpin, founder, CEO of the #1 media platform in housing. So Clayton, welcome. What's up?
Thrilled to be back, Dave, Deborah. Great to see y'all.
Good to see you. So Clayton picked the title, What's Important Now? I love that title because it gives us an opportunity to debate, like, what we think's most important. Y'all think something that might be more important, and it even gives us an opportunity to kind of have that conversation among ourselves, like what is most important. I think it's also important to note that what's most important for a top producing loan officer who's killing it is probably going to be different than what's someone who's really struggling. And there are a lot of people that are struggling and thinking, hey, should I stay in the business or not? It's also going to be different for a branch manager or a regional leader. It's going to be different for a C-suite executive. So we'll try to hit what's most important in housing, and of course, realtors. What's the most important to realtors? So Clayton, anything you want to just kind of share, just in case we got a new loan officer on the call, who you are and what you're doing, and then we'll get into the topic.
Yeah, happy to, Dave. And I think we picked the title, What's Most Important now is because we didn't know what was going to be important this week. So we needed a broad title to give us some breath here. But yeah, thanks for the intro. I'm Clayton Collins, the CEO at Housing Wire. Our strategy is bringing the full picture of information to housing professionals across real estate and mortgage. We want to be your lead source for information on news and data and analysis and events, everything you need to know that brings power to your profession, helps you educate borrowers or home buyers, referral partners. And we're hiring and building a team of journalists and researchers and analysts who help bring all that information. And we have great people on the team like Logan Modeshami and Mike Simonson, who cover the housing market and real estate data trends, editors like James Kleiman, who serve our origination audience and publish our Lending Life newsletter, and awesome podcast hosts like Sarah Wheeler, who hosts the infamous Housing Wire Daily. Sarah's killing it with that podcast. I would never want the responsibility of a daily podcast, but she carries it and carries it with grace.
Yeah, and I just love what you're doing. I specifically love how it's all of housing. Congratulations on the gathering. I've said it publicly a couple times, and after reflecting, I mean, that's my all-time favorite event. It was just bringing, part of it was the timing, this NAR settlement, having real estate executive, mortgage executives, but the venue is great. The lineup of speakers was great. The format was great. Usually I go to events and I've got a number of like, hey, here's suggestions to do better next year. And it was really hard to think of what should you do different next year. It was just so well done.
Well, I appreciate the words. Yeah, we got a lot of really positive praise on the back end of that event. I think it went excellent. The speakers brought the heat. The attendees showed up and networked and consumed content and had cocktails and food. They did all the things. There's so many kind words on the back end. It's almost like uncomfortable for me. I'm like, all right, just buy your ticket and we'll see you next year. But it is fun.
Well, I had major FOMO, so y'all did a great job, even just on social, creating, the stories where anyone who didn't go, you better believe I will be there next year.
like you said, we did a great job on social. Honestly, it's the community. It's like the attendees and the speakers like did the work for us. And when we started doing events years ago, we wanted to like build for the industry and eventually by the industry. And so like we've had so many great engaged parts of the attendee community and speaker community this year. We're going to be pulling some people in to like help plan some of the content for next year. And like, I mean, ultimately a media publication is, you know, nothing without the engaged readers and users and attendees. So if it's not for like speakers who have great ideas and audience members who say, I really want to learn this or meet so-and-so, then we take those things and run with them. So it's like having the engaged community is critical. Such an important component.
Yeah, agreed. So final note on that, guys, and then we're going to dig into this topic is truly, if you're a executive on this call, like mark the date next year, get the ticket. If you're someone that wants to be an innovator in the mortgage and real estate space and you're a manager, leader, it really is something to mark the date. I've already confirmed I will be there next year, put it in my calendar, and I'll be there. So
we're bringing it out to Colorado Springs, the beautiful Broadmoor Resort in June. So it'll be a cool venue.
Yeah, lots of cool hiking trails close by, even some fly fishing not too far away. So I'll be there. Maybe I'll get in a little early for some hiking and fly fishing. One more thing, you know, because another thing I love what you've done is you've acquired a data company and you've really made a commitment to being a data-centric media platform. And one of the messages I'm always talking to about lenders, talking to about loan officers, you got to be a data-driven, process-driven mortgage advisor. And lenders, you need to turn your loan officers into these data-driven mortgage advisors. Could you just speak to your strategy and your commitment around data and how important you think it is? And I just want people to hear that right from you.
Yeah, I mean, so we acquired Altos Research close to 2 years ago now with the primary thesis that like content and media, business media specifically, has changed a lot over the last decade. It's no longer just about narrative driven reporting. Like we need proprietary and fast access to data. So when we're talking about the housing market, we're not talking about hearsay narrative. We're talking about actual numbers and current numbers, not inventory and pendings and applications data that's 60 or 90 days stale. And what we found in Altos was a real-time data source that gives us the active inventory metrics that let us analyze the market at a national level, but also at local levels. And the timing of that deal and the timing of this like continued investment, we're close to done, Dave, is that the market's moving faster than ever. There's a lot of misperceptions and misconceptions about what's driving housing, the impact of interest rates, the mortgage rate lock-in effect, how the job of originators and agents is changing. That all of that can be explained, or at least better explained with data. And just this week, we dropped a cool report on the mortgage rate lock-in effect that we kind of like turned. I believe we've like kind of flipped perceptions on their head, and like people have been talking about lock-in as being a low interest rate phenomenon. And like we have some data that says it's really a high interest rate phenomenon, and it's not necessarily going to change in the same time frame that people think it is. So we're making investments in like team and actual data sources to be able to bring new insights to the industry. And course, we'll still cover the people that are changing jobs and the companies that are launching new tech platforms or products, like the narrative driven news stuff. But we're also going to be continually going deeper in research and data at a national and local level to help originators be that primary source of information for their community and their referral partners and their clients.
So I love that. I hope people wrote it down. Narrative driven news, real-time data-driven news. And then for most of you that are watching this, you're an operator. You're in the trenches, and you're either a producing manager or you're an operator. And I want you to write down personalized, localized, real-time, data-driven advisor. And so I just think it makes a good case for you to tune in to Housing Wire, be a subscriber, tune in to the localized data that they have. I mean, they have data available in every local market. And then as you create social media, be that, just again, every single person on this call, you can take it local, you can personalize it with the consumer, and then you can put your brand around that. And so, I mean, takeaway number one in the first quarter of this call is exactly what Clayton's doing and how he's operating at a very macro level, multiple industries. Everyone on this call should be turning that into something that you're personalizing in the markets you serve. And Clayton, I don't know, I think you have intention around that. Like that is part of your vision and your mission.
Yeah, I mean, and there's, I mean, Dave, like, the challenges and time frames of integration, but like there's product being developed right now that helps bring some of the data that we have on our Altus Research SaaS products more front and center on Housing Wire. So there's some dev work that we're running through and strategy work to really bring all of this to the forefront. But right now, there's subscribers of Altus Research, primarily a product that real estate agents and title reps use. We're trying to bring that more to the mortgage side, and also our newsroom has all this data at their fingertips. So you'll see more local market coverage coming out of our newsroom. But to do local market coverage at scale is ridiculously hard and like ridiculously like resource intensive. So we're trying to bring the data direct to the mortgage and real estate audience on Housing Wire, so they can see what I have on my screen right now, which is national and like state and county and zip access to inventory numbers, pendings numbers, price increases, price decreases, average listing price per square foot, like all the data that like helps you educate buyers when they maybe have cold feet, or provide this report to your agent and referral partners that might not have access to this information, or the access they have is 60 days stale through their MLS, and we're faster. So we're working on that, Dave. Is going to be front and center. We're going to bring it to this community. I promise.
Can't wait.
But on housingwire.com right now, you'll start to get a taste for where we're going.
Yeah. And guys, stay tuned where we will be collaborating with like specific strategies that they're doing. And then how does that connect as a trust engine powered lender and loan officer? And how can you really go to market with a media partner like these guys and a data partner, and with us? So Deborah Bird, anything you want to call out there, leader in social media, anything that you want to make sure people take away from what just was shared?
I mean, what is so helpful is you make us smarter, and we can easily create on social and just give better advice. I've been following Mike for a long time. In fact, I introduced Mike to Dave, I think a couple years ago, where every Monday I would watch his webinars, and it was just to, poke holes in the, like you said, the most current data and current numbers. Because as the market is shifting, even as a loan officer, if you can provide that information to your agent partners, I mean, that can make or break a deal from listing a property correctly. And if it's just a little bit over and then it sits on the market longer, I mean, no agent wants to have those conversations where you're talking about price reductions anyways. And so the more that you can study the data and be that local market expert and be louder than the media, then the more informed your community will be to make better decisions for them and their family. Because too often we blame the big media, but then I have too many people that I talk to and I'm like, well, what are you doing about it? You do realize they now have this thing that you can you could be the media source for your local community and be 5 Mile famous, right? So, but you got to study, you got to know the data, you got to take the time, put it in your calendar and your win by noon planner, and be knowledgeable so you can share better advice.
I mean, we did a podcast on that, like the national media topic at the gathering a few weeks ago. And like, there's a phenomenon that we've seen happen when the real estate market gets more tumultuous, faster moving, prices moving, rates moving. The national publications love to beef up their real estate teams and start covering real estate with more intent, because it drives traffic, and people love headlines about big home price growth numbers, and they like headlines about home prices falling even more. And so there's a I think there's a tendency of national publications to jump on like the real estate bandwagon when it's like at a peak traffic level, and often, and not to their, I don't know, kind of to their fault, they hire journalists that aren't from the real estate industry and don't cover this like cycle in, cycle out. And where I try to differentiate is like recruit, and then most importantly, retain a team of analysts and reporters that cover real estate cycle in, cycle out. So they know what the false flags look like. They know when the data might be like sending a false signal. They understand the difference between national headlines and local headlines. And anybody can cherry pick some crazy story about like somebody losing their shirt on a house they bought in 2022, or spotlight inventory issues in San Francisco that might not apply here in Dallas, Texas. And the headlines don't always differentiate that. And that is where professionals will always matter in this industry. And being able to tie out the difference. Like, well, we have this trend at a national level where there's inventory has increased for 7 weeks straight. And it's easy to make a national headline and say like, well, this feels kind of like bubble-ish. Inventory is like cranking up. We're 30% higher. Or actually, we're 40% higher than last year right now. But the true housing professionals know that's a really good thing, because we've been inventory constrained for too long. And inventory means that sellers are coming off the sidelines, and those sellers become buyers and brings more liquidity and transactions to the real estate market, and like all positive things. But it's easy to twist 7 weeks or 9 weeks now of inventory growth into a bad story. And I think anyone that's been around the real estate industry long enough knows that there's a lot of people, primarily people that are sidelined from home ownership, that like to root against that housing market. And it's not our primary job is to squash that narrative, but it is something I'm sure everybody faces in their local market as they interact with buyers and sellers.
Well, okay, guys, we're going to get to question number 1 in a minute, but this is too important to leave. Since Kristen and I and Todd founded First Home IQ, I've become very sensitive to negative. By the way, it's not negative news. It's misleading news, and even things that are just like not true. I mean, there was a podcast in December. It's a podcast by the New York Times, and they had an episode called the own versus rent, the new math. And they were positioning, like, hey, even when you own, and these are like exact words, even when you own a home, you're throwing away money like you are when you rent. And they were, saying, hey, maybe it's okay to rent. And in America, renting has an unfair narrative. And they called out, like, they positioned as throwing away money, interest on your mortgage. They called out fixing your home and improving your home is throwing away money. They called out real estate commissions is throwing away money. I mean, guys, the wealth gap in America is who owns and who rents. I mean, the average renter has a net worth of $10,400. The average owner has, the last stat I saw was $392,000, but it's probably over $400,000 now because that data is old. And so, owning versus renting is 40 times different in terms of wealth gap in America. And there's so many media sources that are just giving misleading information that is, exaggerating to a point where it's completely inaccurate and really hurting our country. Any thoughts on that, Clayton?
Agree completely. I can't go much deeper there. I think you nailed it.
Deborah, anything you want to add to, what your push is to our community?
Just to share your voice. Like, I know sometimes from the clients that I speak to, they think that everybody knows this information almost. And it's almost a blessing and a curse to know what you know if you've been in the industry longer, because you can sometimes overthink the message when there are so many first-time homebuyers or renters or even parents who have adult children still living with them that they don't know what to do. They are confused. They may end up renting longer and they just don't even know what that's going to cost them. unless we get on there and we share things like the cost of waiting and why you should actually buy right now, even if interest rates are 7.5%. Because if you just look at pricing and where we think pricing may go, it's not going to get any cheaper. So that I just want to encourage you all, if you haven't checked out First Home IQ, or if you're not subscribing to the newsletters at Housing Wire, there's a lot of them that you can choose from. Make it easy for yourself where you get the emails, automate it to go in a folder so that when you're doing your content research time, you can be a pro. Because again, Housing Wire makes it really easy.
All right, guys. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, you want to go into the first question? I was probably going to venture us in that territory too, but yeah, the topic of waiting is an important one. Dave, I don't know if you caught on, one of the themes at the gathering is like, that was different than events we've held in the past, is like, it's pretty accepted at this point that we're in like this higher for longer rate environment. And like, that's a phrase that's getting used in mortgage. It's also getting used across banking and capital markets, like this higher for longer mentality. And if we rewind to Housing Wire Annual last year, which is the predecessor event for the gathering, there was a overall like vibe or agreement that the mortgage industry from top to bottom thought that the market could save them or save us, and that there was going to be this lower rate environment right around the corner. And we've seen projections for interest rates and volume continually get kicked down the road for the last 18 to 24 months as economists, analysts, and housing professionals all kind of wait for this lower rate environment that just hasn't come yet. And just like the industry has waited for lower rates, there's consumers making the same exact decision, but they're just not armed with the same information that we might be in this like higher for longer environment for not just quarters or months, like potentially years. And Debbie, I think you were like starting to venture into the territory that like of what happens to prices when we do have rate movement. And I've been of this camp and talked about it on our event stages and podcasts and content, that home prices or home payments are probably never going to be lower than they are today. And that the relationship between interest rates and home prices are going to move in lockstep. And the second we see any relief in mortgage rates, we are going to see home price appreciation return, which is one of the scariest things about the current market for me, is that the Federal Reserve is trying to fight inflation, and housing prices are a core component of that on rent and mortgage. And sorry, someone's like knocking on my window out here, distracting me for a second. Housing prices are a core component of that. And if we see home price appreciation go back to 2021 or 2022 levels, I think we have a risk of the Federal Reserve continuing to keep their foot on the throat of rates for longer. So there may be some true benefit to housing by having a higher for longer scenario that prevents a quick home price or fast home price appreciation marketplace. There's also some benefits that we're starting to see happen in the servicing portfolios and pricing of mortgage-backed securities in the higher for longer world.
Yeah, no, really, really good point. Well, hey, I think we've delivered a lot of value in this first 26 minutes. And I think we have shared some things like what's most important now, and, be data-driven, localize and personalize that information, make sure that you have business strategies to help you win and thrive in a higher for longer marketplace, because those are realities. So and by the way, I am going to put a link to take the First Home IQ quiz. That is something I think everybody in our community, you should take it, and you should share it with people that you want to help be smarter. I mean, while we designed it for Gen Z, there's a lot of people that are millennials, just about most people that are renting that aren't getting an A on the test. Gen Z is averaging about 57%, which is, last time I checked, that's either a D or an F. So we got to get people to get a higher score on that. So take that. I'll put a link down below in a minute. But here's the first question. And I want the audience, if you're watching this in our YouTube channel, the bigger audience, I want to know what is most important to you right now. So question to the community, what's most important to you right now? And then question to you, Clayton, what's most important from your perspective right now?
I think I guess the frame of that question, Dave, what's most important to me for like,
Well, time out.
what
No,
we're covering or what?
not to, yeah, sorry for not doing that better. What do you think? And whether you want to pick mortgage executives, you want to pick operators in the trenches, but what's most important to housing right now, given your, view of the industry, which you have a pretty unique view. What do you think is most important to the industry right now?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to the industry is that what we call it housing wire. We think of our the loan originator and real estate audience as the tip of the spear. And so we serve the executive audience, we serve management, production, branch leadership, and then we also serve the tip of the spear. And we think of tip of the spear as the most important, excuse me, the most important professionals in the industry on communicating a broad message to homeowners and home buyers and renters about what's happening in housing. So when I think about what's most important is at the tip of the spear, the people who can communicate with people who buy and sell houses, have a data-driven understanding of the market and are able to help homeowners and home buyers make smart decisions. And we understand that buying and selling is an extremely personal choice. But what gets me what I think is most important is that people are not making bad decisions or even worse, not making a decision, period, because they feel like they don't have enough information or they're acting from a place of fear. Dave, you jumped in a few minutes ago to some of the stats on the net worth or nested equity of homeowners and how home ownership can help create wealth for American families. And what scares me the most is people who aren't armed with the information they need to make a home ownership decision, even when they're financially prepared. So that's what I believe is most important. It's probably the most important thing in all markets, but I think it's particularly important right now because of uncertainty in the interest rate environment, super low inventory in certain markets, and some kind of false flag signals that make this market appear scarier than it should be. So that's what I'm most concerned about and most interested in.
So let's unpack that a little bit. I want to dogpile on that because I have been leading this narrative to the mortgage industry and to real estate. And I came away from your event, pretty well vetted on this, that realtors, it's obvious with the NAR settlement, they need to be able to articulate their value prop in a more compelling way before they even show a home. And then, in all the conversations I had with realtors, sounded really similar. Hey, what's, most of them were leaders. So what is your buyer's agent's value prop? Local market expert, great negotiation skills, trusted network of lender, title, escrow, home inspector to drive, to protect you. But they weren't talking about net worth and how we help you. We are the gateway to building net worth and financial freedom in real estate. And even most mortgage people, it's all about hey, I close loans on time. I have competitive rates. I've been doing this for 20 years. And I really feel like both industries need to come together and be able to communicate and articulate that we are the gateway to net worth. We are the gateway to financial freedom. And they need to be able to show consumers that in a way that's unique, local, and personal. Thoughts?
I feel like we're just venturing into the world of the gospel according to Dave Savage. I'm going to start beating the Dave Savage drum here. But I think we saw this amongst real estate brokerage leaders, and I think we see it in mortgage as well, is that it's hard to understand the impact that home ownership can have on home owners if you were not an advisor for life or part of that person's financial life from the time they buy their first house to sell their first house and buy their second. It's a multi-year or multi-decade process to building housing wealth. And both sides of the industry, brokerage and loan origination, have done a relatively poor job at having really strong pull through and maintaining relationships through multiple stages of home ownership. So if you're the buyer's agent or listing agent when someone buys their first house, you kind of need to be there at the end of that transaction too, to see the impact that you had on that person's, not end of that transaction, end of their own home ownership of that house, and like see what they sold it for, how much they profited, what they did with that equity. And the data says the industry has done a terrible job at actually having that like multi-decade relationship with homeowners. So in terms of like feeling the impact that you have on a person's life, I think it's just not happening if you're not maintaining that long-term relationship. Now we can be data focused and look at housing wealth and like how people that enter home ownership earlier accumulate more wealth over time and are able to jump on the property ladder and upgrade as their family demands it or their lifestyle demands it. But it's much more impactful if you're actually there with the person and can like have see the heartfelt impact that great advisory and great advice and guidance and like financial creativity can bring to people in homeownership. So I guess I'm trying to connect the human side and the data side, Dave.
Yeah, and over time, Deborah, thoughts or questions on this?
This has been probably the biggest challenge I have on our clients. I run a social media marketing company specifically for loan officers, and I have been putting the squeeze on them for the last like really year and a half, 2 years to do kind of like what you mentioned at the start of this call, create content that may be for the community, but by the community, where they're interviewing a client. And maybe it's someone who bought 2.5 years ago, who was a first-time home buyer, who was really nervous to make that decision because everybody and their dog was telling them, don't do it. Why would you ever go 50,000 over list price? Like you're overpaying for something that the market's going to crash and we're in a bubble and blah, blah, blah. But those people made the decision. And so if you could interview them and get them to share their story of how did they personally overcome that fear and what things did they do to get to that point? And oh, by the way, had you waited, this is what that same home would go for today. Here's what the estimated payment would be simply because of where the interest rates are. Here's how your net worth has grown. And so you should be so proud of yourself for making that decision. And oh, by the way, here's how we can future plan for you, whether you keep this home and rent it out or, you sell it. This is how you can buy your next property, because those stories are what emotionally connect us through social media. And a lot of times, I know we talk a lot about data, but I'm always looking for the heartbeat or the vein to the heart to get people to just feel it, because that story gets others to imagine themselves in that situation. And they start to think, okay, I can do this. And this is the person that helped them. And so, don't shy away from the storytelling messages on social, guys, where yes, you still want to have the data to validate the words that you're saying, because let's face it, anyone can be a guru. Like there are no credentials to get on social. And there's a lot of talking head videos, and there's a lot of them that mislead, misguide, and don't have up-to-date information. So part of your content strategy, I encourage you guys, Thursdays are usually when we do annual asset review calls to the database. And then we're usually drawing from those calls to invite people to do just an interview like this. It can be real informal on Zoom, and then you can slice it up and create good social content for the community. So that's what we're doing, Dave.
Yeah, everybody does like the closing table photo or like the keys at the time when someone buys their first house or second house. But like, yeah, who does the 3-year check-in? I mean, I haven't seen that on social. I haven't seen like, hey, I helped Susie and Bill buy their first house 4 years ago. Let's have a chat. And there's probably a story about the school district and the neighbors and I don't know, maybe they talk about money too, but people are going to be funny about money.
Yeah. I'm going to tie this topic together and then Clayton, be ready for a new one. Another, what's most important. So So this is kind of tying, at least how I perceive, one, what Clayton brought up, and two, how you as a lender, specifically people in this community, you guys have MortgageCoach. And this is actually one of the most watched interviews I've done this year, specifically in the past 30 days, where this top producer from cross country, Sean Herrero, is showing, like, hey, realtors, look at how I am showing up with the referrals that you're giving to me. Like let's say the homeowner was not going to cover your commission, how we could build the commission into the purchase price, how we could finance all the costs. So he's showing like how he's doing that. And then he's showing the power of how appreciation works with a mortgage, which, by the way, most people don't even understand how appreciation with mortgage leverage works. And he's showing that consumer what their net worth will be, and not in a decade, in 7 years. And then he's showing different strategies that, hey, what if you invested that money in an asset accumulation account at 7%? And what would your net worth look like? So, I mean, helping consumers make decisions like this. One of my favorite examples of this was a loan officer that was helping a first-time home buyer in Denver, Colorado. It was going from rent to own, and he was able to show him house appreciation, put in 4%, which clearly is incredibly conservative, and showed like, hey, this is what your home would appreciate in 5 years. So your net worth owning versus renting. Again, not a decade, like a half a decade. And what if you house hacked? What if you bought that 3-bedroom house, took $1,200, $600 per bedroom, and invested that at 6%? What would that look like? What would your net worth be 5 years from now? So I just want to close this topic with every loan officer out there that if you are more than a loan officer and you are an advisor, you can radically expand the value prop of your realtors, and you can turn them into real estate advisors. And also, if you are subscribing to Clayton's SaaS platform and you have that local data and you're able to take it the macro local data and show it to the consumer in a really unique way, and then map that to their personal goals. Like, I really believe what Housing Wire's created and what work we've created are just two incredible weapons for both real estate and mortgage professionals. And Clayton, this is maybe an idea, and maybe it's you from the team, maybe it's someone else from your team, but we really craft hey, how does the modern mortgage advisor create a buyer presentation? And they, used your platform, our platform, and we told that story to our community in a really tight way. I don't know if you're game, but I thought that might be kind of fun.
I'll bring in the boss, Sarah Wheeler, all content decisions, but I do love the idea. I think it can have value.
Cool. So we got 20 minutes left, and at some point I want to open an idea. But Clayton, what's another one? What's another thing that you think is most important to lenders in this market right now?
Yeah, so we have 20 minutes left. So I'll give you an option. We want to talk about like some of the commission lawsuit and partnership topics that were on stage at the gathering, Dave, or do we want to talk about?
No, because I just feel there's so much news on that, and I really want to cover like solutions, things that our audience can put into action and get a competitive advantage, or they could get more loans now, or something that's solution oriented.
Okay. Well, my other topic was some of the AI news that's been out there. And like,
are you
we're seeing
kidding?
in the market there.
Who doesn't want to hear about AI news, guys? Give us a little reaction if you wouldn't want to hear some AI news. Let us know what you think about it.
got some hearts and thumbs up. So like, one of my most like memorable conversations from the gathering on stage, Dave, was the interview I did with the new CEO of Rocket, Veron Krishna. And there's a couple of reasons that was super impactful. So Rocket has gobbled up and earned a ton of market share in the last decade. And I feel like often they're like the lender and competitor that everybody like loves to hate, but watches. And some of the positive they've brought to housing in the last decade, and this probably could be argued, is like the push button get mortgage Super Bowl ad pushed a lot of tech into the ecosystem. It brought digital point of sale to the forefront, and like what they're willing to build in-house is like fueled a whole ecosystem of software and technology companies that can now offer those types of solutions to other lenders and originators across the industry. This hire of Veron at Rocket is it's kind of a wild signal. Like, he's an outsider from the mortgage industry coming in to lead arguably one of the largest mortgage lenders in the country. Not a mortgage guy and doesn't pretend to be. And like, Dave, were you in the room for that one, or were you doing it?
I unfortunately was
Yeah.
in meetings, and I've already told you I want to watch the video.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot that. So, but like, it was very apparent. Like, he doesn't try doesn't try to do the mortgage talk track. He's not like trying to represent himself as something he's not. He was at Intel and Thomson Reuters, or a few other businesses. I think he had some time at Groupon too. Like, so he's like tech and like consumer guy. But he talked about AI a lot and revealed what they're doing at Rocket. And they have a platform, their origination platform they call Synopsis, and they have been leveraging tens or hundreds of thousands of customer service call hours to fuel their language model. And now that's integrated into their customer experience and product recommendations and communication flows. So like, he talked about a scenario where a borrower revealed or discussed during their application that they work nights. And now that one mention of "I work nights" fuels all of their communication cadences going forward. So they're never going to call that potential borrower like before 10 or 11 a.m. because, hey, if you work nights, you assume you're sleeping in pretty late in the morning. And developing customized communication flows with borrowers based off of things they said. They're also starting to pick up on like different cues in like verbal, like word choices or tones that like sense when someone's like happy or frustrated or mad, and like changing the interaction pattern based off of like consumer like verbal cues. And so this is powerful from a customer experience perspective. Also for Rocket, they're talking about that this like AI is starting to shave off tens of thousands of man hours in the loan origination process. So it's bringing loans from lead to application to close faster because communications are getting clearer and they're happening at the right time. There's no game of phone tag. And it's also starting to automate a lot of the underwriting and processing functions. And he like kind of openly talked about like those are probably job categories at Rocket that will get significantly smaller over time. So this conversation, and I say significantly smaller, fewer people, and a lot more cost savings, which will drive efficiency for Rocket and arguably give them the ability to be even more competitive on pricing over time. So like, the audience on this one was like, sitting on the edge of their seats. It was a really well received topic because you're kind of getting a glimpse into the strategy and tech capabilities of, for most people, they're one of their key competitors, but also giving a signal to, if you're not going to be the player who builds in-house AI, are you going to be the player who adopts and buys something off the shelf if there's vendors and software providers that are building these types of solutions, which there are? Or are you going to take your business in a different direction and double down on the human interaction side and the relationship side, while the competition like pivots toward artificial intelligence and more tech-enabled solutions? So I'll stop there, Dave, and we can take it forward.
Well, first of all, that was just a great nugget, bro. Thank you for bringing that up. Super powerful. And I'm currently writing some articles and some posts called Beyond Loan Manufacturing. And it's something that I've studied. By the way, everyone, I just put a link to when the rocket went off in 2016, an actual link to the Super Bowl ad. It's less than a minute and just a, deja vu and reminder. But I want to call out when that rocket went out, here's the numbers, man. The industry was spending less than $500 million. It was, according to Stratmore, it was 398 million in tech. And today it's over 1.6 billion. And I personally think that's understated. Like, my gut tells me that that's a understated investment. And all of that money, and I know this firsthand because I sell technology that's in front of loan manufacturing, and I know how lenders buy that tech. I mean, there are some that define MortgageCoach and the touch points we deliver as like, hey, we're going to buy that for all our loan officers, and we're going to make sure they're using it. But the majority of them are like, it's optional, and we'll have an enterprise partnership and we'll let loan officers opt into that. And so for a decade, since Rocket launched, has loan officer productivity gone up? No, loan officer productivity has not gone up. It's down. And so I think there's two things that we're going to see is, first of all, I do think the AI layer within loan and manufacturing is going to profoundly deliver on the promise of tech. So I think we haven't seen the results yet so far, but I think when we are, sitting here in 2027, we will see technology doing a much better job of delivering on the promise of improving productivity of both underwriters and loan officers. And I do think AI will be the breakthrough. So, roger that, agreed. But I also think, especially for the independent mortgage bankers that are listening to this and all the loan officers that are listening to this, a lot of that you can't control. You don't have control over your company making those investments. You don't have your control over your company being successful at how they execute those investments. But you know what you have control over is what happens in front of that transactional experience. You have control over how you quote rates. You have control over how well you listen to a consumer and go beyond the transaction. Don't just ask, oh, how long you live in your home so I can do points versus no points. Like, really start understanding what that family's goals are around real estate, and be the loan officer of a decade, be the loan officer of 2 decades, be the mortgage advisor of 3 decades for a family by asking questions in front of loan manufacturing, putting that information into your tech stack in a way that's actionable. I mean, that's what we're doing here at Trust Engine. Like, let's, what do we know from a data perspective? What did the loan officer learn from a conversation? Let's put those things together. And now, guys, let's optimize for financial freedom. Let's make sure we're giving people alerts, and let's do this in front of loan manufacturing. So, I mean, my message and some of the content I'm going to create is, it's what can we do in front of loan manufacturing? Because I think that's controllable, and I also think it's something that most executives they've not made the investment. They've not put the leadership energy around what happens in front of loan manufacturing. Any comments or thoughts on that, Clayton?
Yeah, I mean, it's the resources in front of loan manufacturing. So, I mean, I think that like bridges together like the personal elements that we were talking about earlier, of bridging like human and data, and like understanding that this is still an incredibly personal decision. And it also kind of bridges together the relationship between like the referral partners, that the agents who are going through their own period of uncertainty right now, and need that like before the loan manufacturing starts communication with the agent, but also with the homeowner. And like one of the other topics that we've been covering more and more recently is the need in a fast moving market for consumers to have early interaction with originators, potentially long before they actually go out and start looking at homes on pre-qual and consultation on what affordability is going to look like. So important topic, Dave, but you are the coach more so than I am on how to exactly have that conversation.
Yeah. Deborah, anything you want to ask? I'm sure you're pretty curious. But by the way, Clayton, are you going to make available any of that content on Housing Wire? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I paid for a ticket. When do I get it? And are you going to make it available to the general public?
Yeah, so we're gonna some of the content, like some of the key sessions, like my interview with Veron, will go to housingwire.com and our YouTube channel. Others going to be available to our Housing Wire subscribers and event attendees. Those are big data files, like moving over all the content from a 4-day event. So like our production team is sorting through it all and producing right now, but we'll start dropping that in the coming month, Dave. So
Cool. Well, just
content to
know
come.
when that one hits, I want to know about it. And I know Deborah Bird does. And I know,
Yeah.
guys, the whole audience, it really, I missed it, but I had multiple people say, Dave, did you see that? And I'm like, no. And they're like, it was amazing. And I
Yeah.
had a number of executives forward me their notes. So I feel like I got a lot of notes, but I would recommend every loan officer, every regional, every leader, you watch those things and you don't come at it from, oh, they're our competition. You come at it from like, hey, this is where the puck's going, and what can I control, and how can I win today and going forward? Deborah, thoughts,
You
questions?
might even convince me to come over to Facebook a little bit and share that link when it's live, Dave. I'm usually an
Yeah.
Instagram and LinkedIn guy, but maybe I'll come over here to the Facebook community and
Bro, we
drop
would,
the video.
that is an ask. Just know we would appreciate that. Oh, and by the way, Clayton just shared a copy of the interview, which I did read. So this is a article that Housing Wire wrote that kind of summarized it in key points. So guys, check it out. We put a link down below. If you're watching this in YouTube, there'll be a link down below in show notes.
So Dave, the word that I wrote down when thinking about what's most important right now is I wrote down conversion. And I feel like a lot of what we talked about today with tonality and learning how to ask more strategic and curious questions to find what really matters to people when they're buying, and what's the sweet spot of when they start thinking of buying the next home. That can help with conversion, but also I have a lot of conversations, and the biggest cost in a lot of loan officers' business today is lack of systems to follow up with people who showed interest maybe a year or two ago, and they were on the fence. And that's where maybe if you had better data, or you could level up your conversations, maybe you could provide enough information for people to actually, make different decisions. But then too, do you have a system in place in your CRM? And if you don't have a CRM, maybe it's an Excel spreadsheet right now. But how many people did you pre-approve last year who haven't bought yet? Like, say in the last 2 years, how many intros or leads did you get that haven't even applied? And why? And do you have a list of why maybe they haven't? And it could be for a number of different reasons. Maybe they were waiting on a job situation, or waiting for rates to fall or the market to crash, and so they renewed their lease. So how long did they renew their lease? Do you have something in your system or in your process to then, touch base with them and eventually convert them? So just getting a little bit better with every single interaction that we have, whether it's partners, home buyers, referral sources, that can make the biggest difference in getting an extra couple loans a month. And then likewise, as you're going through the process, do you have a systematic way that courts the listing agent from every offer you submit, regardless if you win the offer or not? And every listing agent on a contract, are you asking for a meeting after you wow them? And are you asking for referrals from every single client that's building your next month? So like little things that we could do just a little bit better with today's opportunities right now, that when you just, turn that dial, even if it's 1% on your conversion, it's going to make a big difference. And so it's not always a lead problem, it's a conversion problem.
Yeah.
Can I add one? I like that one word summary of conversion. Can I add a word of my own there? Confidence. And I think like all of this shakes down to, and we talk about data and news and analysis and tactic and coaching, is that like when you are interacting with anybody, but especially a prospective client or referral partner, confidence that the advice you are offering, the products that you have available to you, the capabilities and knowledge that you have from your background as a loan originator or a real estate agent. You're confident in like your body language and the message and the sales process. Nobody wants to hear and nobody needs to hear that like this has been a tough market or inventory is really tight or rates are really high. Like it's just negative. Like I feel like just positivity and confidence are so freaking important. And it's not about like a false narrative or like trying to like, put on a smile when you're not happy, but like, I don't know, you're not going to sell, you're not going to help people. People aren't going to trust you if you're negative and not confident. So I don't know. I think about that a lot.
Yeah, that's going to be a sentence I want to close with. At least my closing thought is how well can you bring confidence to both home buyers and realtors in this incredibly confusing market. There is chaos, there is confusion, and you nailed it. I actually wrote down confidence equals conversion, and your ability to deliver that is everything in this market. And by the way, that's my take on that is what's most important right now in this market. So Clayton, we've got a couple minutes left. I'll give you first round at closing thoughts, and then Deborah Bird, be prepared to do a 1 minute win by noon close. So what
I'd
any
rather
closing
you do that
thoughts
to me.
for Clayton? Clayton, any closing thoughts?
I mean, confidence equals conversion, right? So like, but be armed with the information you need to be confident. This isn't BS, like false confidence. This is, I've done the work. I've helped people in the past. I've had the right coach and team around me. I've done the local housing market research. I understand how it's different from the national housing market. I understand what my company does, what my products do, what my competitors are doing. And now I have the confidence to go out and deliver great advice. I think that's what I do as a CEO. I am building my business through hiring great people and growing organically. We're also doing acquisitions and building our business through acquisition. So I watch everything. I'm watching what the competition's doing. I'm watching what our team does and choosing how I allocate time and resources to grow my business. And I do that with confidence. And I expect everybody in this business community that we're part of does the same thing. So confidence equals conversion. I'm going to get that tattooed on me, Dave.
All right. Well, if you do it, send me a picture and I'll run up and do it too.
No, you have to go live on Facebook when you do it.
All right, we'll see. Deborah Bird, close us out. Win by noon style.
So the first action is, are you delivering personalized, localized, real-time data at scale? Are you leveraging social? Are you giving advice so that people know who to connect with when the time comes? And this would be to attract, your referral sources and your buyers. And if you don't feel or you don't believe in your advice, which belief would be my other word, if you don't truly believe that the advice you give is going to create a multi-decade difference in the families you serve, then we got to fix that part first. And Housing Wire and using MortgageCoach is a great way for you to kind of put that, cape on where you literally feel like a superhero walking into any meeting because you are equipped with information and data that makes you stand out, and hopefully that will allow you to believe in the advice that you give. But you've got to do the work of studying so that you're not just regurgitating headline news without maybe fully understanding all of the context or other variables that may be impacting those, headlines. Like I just saw one recently about foreclosure. So do the work, be data-driven, use your data to help validify the words that you speak, which once you do enough reps, hopefully that builds your confidence, and then go to work. Like this is when you should be meeting with more partners than ever, more clients than ever. They need you. It's just a matter of, will you believe in yourself enough and have the courage to make the call and to set the meeting so that you can also impact your referral sources business? Because too many keep that information too close. They don't go online and share it, or they're not confident enough to make that outbound call to a partner and meet with them. And so I just want to infuse all of you listening. Let's be bold, be brave, and let's share the wisdom that we learn and not keep it, private.
All right, guys. So been a great call. Clayton, thank you so much for all the time and wisdom, and just for always being such a great partner and friend in the business. I appreciate what you and Housing Wire are doing for our industry. Yeah, guys, give him a reaction. Let Clayton know what you thought of today's call. I want to remind you guys, if you are not subscribing to the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel, like go and subscribe so that when we add new content, you're getting an alert on that. Make sure that you are following savageinsights.com. I am updating that like literally every day. You know, the content that I think is most important, which lots of it's the content I'm creating, but sometimes I'm promoting things from Housing Wire. I'm just, the top 3 links are always what's coming next and what I think is most valuable. And then of course I have a text group, 949-799-0837, couple texts a week. If you want to become a data-driven mortgage advisor, or you want your loan officers to be data-driven mortgage advisors, subscribe to that. All right, guys, this is a wrap. Have a great weekend. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. We appreciate you. Take care, y'all.